brought to you almost live from the Dude in the Basement studios. Why? Because that's where the good stuff is. It's Sips, Suds, and Smokes with your smoking host, the good old boys. Suds, suds, suds. It's time for more suds.
Hello and welcome to Sips, Suds, and Smokes. I'm good old boy Mike, and joining me here today for this Suds episode is Reverend Mark.
Cheers.
Greetings from GABF on day 2. This is another Suds segment that we're bringing to you from the Great American Beer Festival in Denver, Colorado. So we've had a lot of fun here over the last few days, and this is our continuing coverage of the festival and a lot of great information to share with all of you as well. And it seemed like we finally found some music that was appropriate for this experience, wasn't it? Yeah,
as we were doing a little bit of Pandora shuffling on the way up to Boulder yesterday. We struck a chord.
We're like, that's totally it. That's the theme song for this episode, which is Wish You Were Here, because truly we wish all of you could attend such a really great festival. And so while you're enjoying some of that in the background, we have some great information. So we did drive up to Boulder, and we headed out to Avery Brewing Company. And we had a great time there, and ended up in a rather impromptu recording session that we did with an episode that you'll hear maybe in a week or two. But we want to talk a little bit about the rest of our visit there at Avery as well. You'll get to hear the rest of that episode, like I said. But we had some great beers, while we were at Avery.
Great place. I mean, I was there 2 years ago, so it was a little reminiscent of sort of the industrial backwoods part of...
hands down, that has to go as one of the strangest locations for a brewery. It's the only place I know where you could probably get your muffler fixed, your shocks replaced, and get a beer all within 50 feet of each other. I mean, it's definitely a very unique place to have a brewery. And I'm sure that we were talking about... we thought Avery's definitely on the cusp of having to expand. I mean, there's no way they can meet the production demand with where they're at.
Well, yes, and a second production brewery is actually under construction from what we were being told. So
yeah. Well, we really had a great time, and the tap room there is a really great place to visit. And one of the reasons why we went up there was to enjoy a lot of beer. One that was not going to be here at GABF and is only available at the tap room. And we had some really great beers. We sat down, we had a flight of, 14 different beers, and really got to see a broad range of, things that were available there. And we had some aged, non-aged products. We had some brand new things, that they've had, as well as some historical things as well. So the variety is the thing that really caught my attention.
Yeah, and also how they really are walking a really delicate, but I think competent sort of balance on the balancing beam of the beer world in, being true to, sort of the West Coast and, hop forward, really big, flavorful, aromatically robust beers, and then really, stylizing some interesting wheat beers and sours and other kinds of things that are, starting to become more popular with each gathering of the GABF.
Well, so if you had walked up and probably asked me, what is Avery Brewing, what are their concentric beers, I would have said that they are just very good at making good hoppy beers. I tend to think of, Maharaja as a die-hard beer that they have. The Reverend, those big Belgian quads, and triples. The Litigator. Just all these really great beers, but they. I tend to think of them as big hoppy beers, and all of a sudden I'm really seeing where they're branching out into a number of areas. Definitely, you know, the way they've taken some of those historical beers and aging them now, we were very impressed. And I know you're going to talk about a couple of beers, you know, as we get to rating some beers later. But definitely, some of the beers that we had that were aged there were really quite extraordinary, and only available there at the tap room, by the way. So it's definitely worth the trip out to Boulder just to snag those. Or if you see them at a local retailer, you know, definitely pay attention to some things that may, you know, come out in some limited release that are aged. The sour program there is actually doing quite well, and I was very impressed with their. It's not really kind of gone nutty, you know. They're stepping into introducing things that I think their constituents who are used to purchasing their brand, I don't think it's going to be so abrasive and jolting those people. I think it's going to expose them to a style of sour beers that are going to be approachable.
Right, and they also have the, you know, very traditional Berliner Weiss, and then they serve it with the syrups.
Which we thought was, we were standing up and truly applauding that. I mean, thank you for recognizing the proper way to serve Berliner Weiss, which is you should offer it with some choice of, you know, a complementary fruit that you're actually infusing in the beer right there. So,
yeah, and it's really a lot of fun to, you know, start out with just the straight Berliner Weiss, and, you know, it's just so lactic heavy, you know, very puckering, but very clean and a very low gravity beer. And then, yesterday we had a creek or cherry, kind of almost like a compote, it looked like, and you had to really swirl it in your glass as you consumed it because it's so easily stratified to the bottom of the snifter.
Well, the one beer that we noticed caught the attention of some folks that were sitting next to us is they actually have beer that they're aging in tequila barrels.
Yeah.
And those were really quite tasty. And that's probably the first time I've had a beer that was aged in tequila barrels. And they were fabulous.
Yeah, you know, it does give, you know, that a little bit more of an kind of an earthiness rather than, say, the vanilla that you typically get with, say, a bourbon barrel. So
definitely props off to you know, Avery for definitely stepping up and doing something that is innovative, but yet it's not abrasive, you know. So that's really great that they're able to step out and bring something to the market that we've never seen before, but at the same time, you know, going, wow, that was a lot better than I would have thought it had been on paper, you know. I don't know if that was their same reaction with the first time they were sampling, you know, probably thieving from the barrels going, man, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
But I have not seen those products, you know, on the market either. So I really wonder if those will expand outside the tap room or, you know, even regionally here in the, you know, Denver, or, you know, Colorado or Salt Lake City or Salt Lake or, you know, area or region, they'll be able to distribute those products.
Yeah, so long as it's a high gravity product, you know, and then it'll travel well. Otherwise, it really needs to stay local.
Yeah. Well, what were some other things about our trip to Avery that you liked?
Oh, well, you know, I'll start at the top of the list, and then we'll plummet downward. But actually, it was overall just a wonderful experience. The ownership, you know, the management were just wonderful to us.
Holly was great. Thank you, Holly, for treating us like royalty that day. It was really nice.
Very much. Of course, you know, to me, the Beast Grand Cru was my just out of the park. You know,
absolutely. I mean, that beer was was phenomenal. You know,
it's a Belgian strong dark. Yeah, it would travel well for years.
Hopefully, with us.
Yeah,
at some point in time. Well, it was really great to venture, you know, away from GABF, you know, once again, and you know, see a lot of things that we wouldn't necessarily see at the festival itself. But we definitely made the trek back into Denver to get to the festival itself. So you and I definitely walked in. You've been to GABF before. What were some of your impressions of walking into the show this year from the past experiences that you've had?
Well, it's always, just a large venue beyond description. You have to be there just to, sort of take in what it means to look down all these different aisles that just seem to stretch on into another time zone almost. 3,000 plus beers on tap, and all these many people coming in from different entrances. Fortunately, we had some passes that allowed us to enter a little bit more convenient area. But it seemed to me that everybody was being expedited in a more efficient manner than even two years before.
I thought what was funny is, even though you and I sat and we talked about even a game plan walking in there, and we even had like maps, of the convention floor itself, we still walked in and got lost. I mean, that's crazy. So there were certain areas that we wanted to go to as we walked in, and we completely got twisted around. It's that big. I mean, it's very difficult to try and describe this over the radio, just how physically imposing, having that size of a beer festival is. And then when you have like certain objectives, that you want to have. The one thing I did like as we walked in was front and center right there at the end cap was the Pro-Am competition. And we're going to get to talk about this in another episode with you and some other folks that are competing in the Pro-Am division.
Yeah, the Pro-Am, I think, is really what is making this whole thing, GABF, and all the hundreds of festivals that go on around the country meaningful and popular, is that it's because of the homebrew revolution as much as the commercial craft brew that we're here to sample. So, I think that this wave is really riding on the backs of millions of individuals who just love to, get out on the weekend and, like I do from time to time, in front of my garage and just, go through the ritual of the mash and just, kind of get up to my elbows and.
And the only thing that was missing from being on the floor was the good smell of a boil, like we had when we were walking around at New Belgium. They need to pump it into the convention center.
Yeah, it would be great if they could have a demonstration, but I'm sure the fire marshal wouldn't allow that. So, yeah.
Bring on Chris's all electric job. There you go.
Mm-hmm.
No open flame. Maybe that's the way to do it. So there were definitely, first impressions that I had walking in. We talked about the physicality, of it itself. And so definitely the people is definitely the thing that caught my attention. I mean, oh my God, where did all these beer nerds come from? I saw people dressed up as Waldo. I saw people dressed up as an alien. At times, it was borderline a Comic-Con event and a beer festival. I mean, it just, I think people got lost on the way to the Star Trek convention as well. I mean, it's just really, some folks take this to an extreme. I felt underdressed. Didn't you?
It had a bit of a kind of a Mardi Gras feel to it as well.
People walking around with Mardi Gras beads.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you could definitely tell that for the locals, this is a diehard event. I mean, they probably, they asked for a vacation for this months in advance, to go to this thing. So the other thing that caught my attention was, and we talked about this kind of, at the end of the day, was it was difficult to understand kind of the whole thing as you're walking up to a brewery booth and really who you were interacting with. And people have different, credentials and bands and stuff and shirts and to help you kind of understand who you're interacting with. And the thing that definitely caught my attention is there were a lot of people that sent their beer, but they weren't there representing their beer at the festival itself. And that was kind of, I don't know. I just thought it was a missed opportunity, for a lot of those brewers. Because I ended up talking to a lot of the people that were just pouring the beer, and you'd walk up and you'd go, what's in this beer? And they go, well, I don't know. It's on that placard there. You'll have to read it.
Yeah. Well, and God bless all the volunteers. They're making it happen.
Totally.
But I agree, it would be good for at least every brewery to have, either the brewer or someone who has some technical knowledge about the recipes and all. I'll have to, give a shout out to Bosco's. Karen Lassiter was there, and that is sort of what we're talking about. They had volunteers working their booth, but she was there to describe their beers.
Well, and so there was a marketed difference when you walked up and there was somebody there from the brewery that you were interacting with. It's not like you and I were just, wanting to decompose technically, what they were serving. It wasn't 1,000, points of inquisition. It was just a simple question. What's in the beer, And sometimes it was just, the pictures were out there and the names of the beers were on there and you had no idea even what was in the pictures. And I just thought that was a real tragedy that you would go to all the trouble of making your beer, of making sure that you were going to be at the GABF, and then do nothing more than just send your beer and not educate the people that are there representing your beer. It's almost like they were just sending it to be judged and not consumed.
Right.
And I don't know if that's a fair assessment, with some brewery and their objectives, but there seemed to be, definitely something that was amiss, with that type of approach.
Yeah, and I mean, in the larger public, that come to these kinds of events are not going to be asking all these kinds of questions, but there are going to be a few of us. And, I know they can't give, like, exact recipes for proprietary reasons, but, to be able to say, what is it about this particular, amber that I'm picking something up here? And they could kind of give you a hint, so that you could sort of go back and maybe toy with that yourself.
Or comment about it intelligently, for sure. Well, that brings me around to the last thing that caught my attention is who was not there. And it's definitely something that we kept on talking about even, over the last few days as we're going to these events where some breweries are not at GABF. And so I think prior to this, I probably had the idea that this was an open beer competition, and it's not. It's a land grab for people that can actually get into the convention hall and serve their beers, and then those beers to be judged. So there are a lot of breweries that are not even going to be part of the judging process at all.
Yeah, and I don't know how you can really establish, if you will, an A-list of breweries that, are just doing amazing, groundbreaking work. So, we've mentioned Crooked Stave, who's conspicuously absent this year. There needs to be, some sort of A-list that just these breweries are welcomed in first, and maybe have a two-stage registration process where at least in the breweries that in the past have meddled, but and so
that got shut out and are not even here, even though they're past medal winners, which I would consider just almost an offensive, posture by the folks that put on the festival itself. Well, I'm sure that somebody will figure that out. If you consume enough beer, you can solve any problem, right? Maybe so. Well, we're going to take just a quick breather here, and then we're going to swing around and talk about some of the beers that we had yesterday and rate some of those. So we'll be right back. Well, welcome back, and we appreciate you joining us for some more discussion about our next day here at GABF. That swings us around to talking about the beers that we've had here over the last few days. So we definitely had some things we wanted to talk about today. So, Reverend Mark, what are some of your beers that you wanted to review and talk about from yesterday?
Well, as we go down the list of Avery beers, of course, the Beast was, far and away the one that I just wanted to sit around with for about an hour and a half. And it really did, although we had just a 3-ounce snifter, as it warmed up, it just became more, like nectar. It was wonderful.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier the way in which Avery is contributing, of course, to the sour beer. I don't know if it's a revolution yet, but it's certainly a growing niche market. The Ermita 6 was just a really good, solid, sour, puckering, and yet a clean finish. Had a little bit of fruit to it. not fruit so much in the aging, but just it had a fruitiness also. So it got a fairly high mark.
So let's swing back a minute. So what's your rating on the Beast?
Oh, a 5.
Oh, okay. That's easy. Listen to that hang time. Give me another. And the second one?
The Armida 6 got a 4.
A 4. A body should really not make that sound.
But I have to say, of the very many fine beers that we sampled yesterday at Avery, the one that, sort of caught my attention, and then the more I thought about it and tasted it, I couldn't quite get the collaboration. It was a Bhakti Chai Brown Ale. It was sort of like Avery and Starbucks collaboration. And I was wondering where the drizzle of caramel was going to be.
Would you like some whipped cream on top of that?
Yeah.
So is this is almost sounds like a marketing meeting that went bad. Or somebody went, well, what spare ingredients do we have? Or somebody spilled some chai into some beer and went, hey, man, we should make that. Or is this just a homebrewer's, a nightmare come true? Is that basically it?
Yeah. But it does speak that, breweries like Avery have that kind of capacity. There are smaller brew pubs that just could never consider something like this at all. Whereas at least, being able to experiment with tea, forgive me, but that's just not my glass of beer.
So do you want to rate that?
Yeah, 1.
Which is, that sucks. Give me anything but a bite. Well, what are some other beers that caught your attention that you want to talk about here today?
Well, at the GABF last night, unfortunately I didn't take notes on everything. How could you? We just more or less headed into a general area of California Pacific Northwest, and this sort of veered off the continent at one point. But a couple that really came to mind. First, there was the Boneyard beer of Bend, Oregon, and they had the notorious Triple IPA. And I thought it was a little unfiltered. It did not have a lot of heavy caramel to it. It, for me at least, was another one of those big beers that improved as it warmed. Although we only had an ounce, so I'm only estimating that that's what would have been the case. But it seemed like a really good, solid Imperial style IPA, and it's one of the better ones last night. I'd give it a 4.
A 4 as well. The body should really not make that sound.
And then the one though that I think that really stayed with me last night was from Fish Brewery in Olympia, Washington. And this particular offering they had last night was the Swordfish Double Cascadian Dark Ale.
Huh. I had that too.
And I liked it because it had sort of the body and flavor of an IPA, but it had the darker kind of roastier malts. So, coloring wise, it was we were more on the, if you will, kind of keeping up with our theme today, we were on the dark side of the brew.
I like that. That's funny.
So, and I like, and it's a real, and I was actually at the Olympia in Olympia, Washington several years ago, and went to Fish Brewery, and I especially appreciate that brewery because of their history with one man in particular, Fred Eckhart, who along with Michael Jackson, and I don't mean the Michael Jackson that you think about normally, and he and Fritz Maytag and Charlie Papazian were like some of the main writers and critics who championed craft beer 30 years ago and more. And he has a connection with the Fish Brewery. So yeah, that one totally on the top of the list. What was on the?
So what's your suds rating for that beer?
I'll give that a 4, but but it was a slightly higher 4 than the last one. Yeah. And then I have to say, I don't know really how to rate the beer, but I'll have to rate the beer company. After the GABF last night, we wound up going, we thought, to a reception over at the Hilton for the left hand, and they wound up giving us the back of their hand. And so, the Milk Stout Nitro. Still waiting to see what that's about. They ran out of beer.
Well, there was definitely a head-shaking moment. That I don't understand how you could have a beer event and run out of beer. I mean, that truly, that sucks. I just can't believe that happened. So, anyway, I'm hoping that they'll listen to this and redeem themselves by sending a couple of cases of whatever they were trying to pimp to us so that we could enjoy it. Well, I had a great time going around and tasting a lot of things. So we did kind of swing through most of the layout of the hall itself is regional based. And we decided to go after the Pacific region was the area that we decided to try to tackle tomorrow. That was our at least our objective. And we got through all the Pacific area as well as we swung around to the Pacific Northwest to look. I'm probably estimating I probably tasted somewhere between 100 to 150 beers easily yesterday. And so to get on this list, you truly had to have something that caught my attention. Easily at the top of my list yesterday was the Brewery's Chocolate Rain.
Oh, yeah.
I'm telling you. The line for this was already 30 people deep, and it was the first day. And there's a good reason why, this beer was really so good. So the brewery makes a lot of very good beer, and they're well known for a lot of their sour beers that they make as well. This happens to be an Imperial Stout. And it'll definitely catch your attention because the ABV of this is 19.5%. So this is definitely a beer you need to think about, consuming as you approach it as well. But I thought that it was dense, it was a little bit sweet, it was very complex, and I just thought it had a great balance. We've had a lot of great Imperial Stouts lately, but I thought this definitely deserved a 5, which is listen to that hang time, give me another. And the only reason why I didn't go back for another of this is because the line was 45 people deep by the time I got out of the line, and that was the only thing that kept me going back from another one. So hopefully they'll listen to this and ship out a whole case of that, straight to us to enjoy in the future. Next up on my list was a real surprise as well. So I thought it was interesting that you picked an IPA. And that was one of the things that I noticed as we went around, for all the Pacific booths. And inevitably, I'm staring there and I'm asking them, so what's your best beer? And I got handed so many West Coast IPAs. I felt like somebody had shoved a whole handful of West Coast style hops up my left cheekbone. And I was down to the point after about 50 beers. And I swear, if somebody handed me yet another West Coast style IPA, I thought my palate was going to explode. So the only saving grace was to come across a few exceptional beers that were not West Coast IPA styles, and this was definitely something that not only was a good palate break for me, I thought it was a really great beer, and I enjoyed talking about to the brewery representative who was there, to talk about this beer as well. So the beer that caught my attention on is Two Candles from Drake's Brewing. This is a very different style. It is a blend of a blonde and a Hefeweizen, and then they finish it off with Lacto and Brett. So this easily won my best sour beer of the day. I just thought that it was really great. It was very straightforward. It was complex enough to definitely catch my attention and have me talking with them. The one thing that it really kind of caught people off guard is their description on their placard didn't reflect that they had finished this off with any souring agents. And so they had presented it as a blonde and Hefeweizen blend. So a lot of people were looking at it and going, oh my God, this is sour. What happened? It's supposed to be a sour beer. They weren't telling you that they had finished it off, as a sour beer. And I think blending, two things like that to make a sour beer, I don't know. I just thought that was quite innovative.
Well, and of course, that's if you talk about sour beers in
you would
relation
like
to
to think they were lambics.
Lambics are usually a blended, and that's.
But I don't know. I just thought it was. I thought it was a really great beer and stood out in a crowd of IPAs, very well. And the ABV on this is 5%, so I think it's very approachable. My suds rating for Two Candles Drake's is going to be 4. A body should really not make that sound. So that swings around to some things that, on top of all the dearth of IPAs that I tasted back to back, that barely any of them caught my attention. There was one other beer that you and I both had that we thought was standout, which was when we walked up to the Anchor booth.
Yeah.
And they had a very unique offering that I thought was worthy of mentioning here real quick, which was their OSB.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. What a great beer. And very uncharacteristic.
Their old barrel ale.
Yeah. And I think it was worthy of definitely saying, I think that was worth a suds rating at least of 3, if not better. So, what a relief. And definitely a beer that I'm sure that will be somewhere in your market and should definitely pick up, some of that to try. Well, that leads me to talk about something that, frankly, please, just stop making this. Of the dearth of things that we had, it was just, at times I was like, please don't serve me anything in this category. So I walked up, a typical, experience walking up to a table, tell me, some things that you enjoy or you think are good. And so I came across this beer that was made, it was a Belgian Quad called the 12, and wow, I forgot to even write down who the brewery was that made this. Oh, Black Diamond, I remember that now. And it's a quad with cherries, and oh my God, icky. Oh, just please, stop making this. It just is so bad. The ABV on this was 11.4%. Frankly, if they had watered it down with a gallon of water, it still would not even crawled up to my rating on this, which is going to be a 1, which is that sucks. Give me anything but please give me a gallon of water and stop making that. I would beg of you, please. So that, is a quick summary of, some of the beers that we had at GABF, for day 2 here. Got some cool stuff coming up today, don't we?
Yeah, have a special event, a charity event, Pints for Prostates.
Yeah,
is that right?
That's right. And a rare beer tasting is part of that activity, and we're going to get to swing through some regions that we didn't get to in the at the GABF as well. And so I look forward to tasting a lot more beers, maybe relaxing, not having any more West Coast IPAs would be great. We'll see. I doubt that will happen, but anyway. But, look forward to, seeing what the day brings to us.
Yeah,
sure.
I'm looking forward to seeing what new offerings are at the Pro-Am table. This year, there are a little over 100 Pro-Am contestants, and they're splitting it into smaller groups of like 30, 35 or something at a time. I'd say, of course, I'm a bit biased. He's a good friend, but I thought Kevin Jones's Texas Pecan Porter was amazing. We'll have him on a show.
On another episode. And I look forward to talking about that. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, really great beer. Well, thanks for joining us again for this episode, and I want to thank Reverend Mark.
Thank you always, and love you out there.
This is, and definitely we have this episode is
Dark Side of the Beer.
Dark Side of the Beer. We'll have to, we might name that.
Wish You Were Here.
Wish You Were Here. Okay, we'll figure out a name of this episode pretty soon. Definitely drop us a line or swing by and try to catch us while we're here at the festival. Would be great. Always great to see our listeners. You can drop us a line at sipsudsandsmokes@gmail.com. Check out our Twitter feed. A lot of stuff, as we're hitting these tasting notes are flowing out there. Our Twitter account is @sipsudsmoke. That's without an S. Most of all, this is good old boy Mike, and I want to ask you to keep on sipping.
This has been a One Tan Hand production of Sips, Suds, and Smokes, a program devoted to the appreciation of some of the finer slices of life. From the Dude in the Basement Studios, your hosts, the Good Old Boys, will see you all next time.